Welcome back, folks. This is Sam from the Ministry of Shirts, your host at the Aussie Screen Printing Club. I'm finishing I like to call it a tour of the United Kingdom. Tour is a bit rich, but I have had the opportunity to speak to some people in the printed apparel game, and I'm really excited to introduce Danny to you. Danny is from the Flippin, got to get the way of saying that correct, the Flippin Sweet Print Company, t-shirt printer, screen printer extraordinaire, man who's perfected the art of the soft hand print using plastisol, and he'll explain some of the techniques behind that. And he's at that business precipice, should we call it a precipice, or just a bridge that he's about to cross by moving from a manual print shop to an automated print shop. Not quite there, but he's pretty close. And super exciting and interesting commentary from him on his journey. So enjoy. Catch you later. Bye. Welcome, mate. Welcome to the Aussie Screen Printing Club. Thanks so much for coming on. From the UK. I'm in the UK, so we're in the same time zone for once, but thanks a lot for joining us.
No, that's all right, mate.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Tell us about, just start where you're at the moment. What are you doing in screen printing? What kind of things are you printing? What kind of business have you got? And then maybe we'll go back and get your full history, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course it is. So at the moment, I'm trying to build a custom screen print shop. We're printing provided artwork from sort of independent, smaller businesses, such as brands, clothing brands that are looking to get started, festivals, events, etc. And it's all I do really is I just screen print on a manual 6-color press.
Nice.
Yeah, we're on the verge of dreaming about an auto, getting over that line. It's a little difficult, but hopefully in the very near future we'll be an auto shop.
Yeah,
but only a small auto shop.
And you're based in, I forget exactly, but you're near Hull, aren't you? Is that northeast of England?
Yeah, that's right. No, that's right. Yeah, near Hull. It's a seaside town called Bridlington. Very out of the way, sort of in middle of nowhere. But
nice.
Yeah.
And you supplying the whole of Britain, or do you do anything in Europe, or what's your market size?
Yeah, it's UK based. Basically, I treat it as an internet business, and I ship across the UK.
Yep.
I don't have too much local work, to be honest. It's a very small town. There's really not a lot of work here for me, so I have to be an internet business. But yeah, we ship all over UK.
Yeah, nice. And how long have you been doing this?
So Flippin Sweet as a business has been around for 10 years now. So November the 2nd, just gone, was the 10th anniversary.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But as a screen printer, I would say maybe 5 or 6 years. 5 or 6 years of good, solid screen printing and actually knowing what I'm doing. Whereas the first few years were just all mistakes, and I wasn't really qualified to be doing it. But you learn as you
taking orders.
Your mistake.
You're still taking orders, but kind of cutting your teeth and learning how to make it work. Because the trouble with screen printing is, and I know everyone says this, but there's just so many variables, aren't there? You think you got something right, and you go, "Why isn't that working?" And you discover another variable. Yeah.
Yeah. So even today, with all the experience, you're still you can get everything right. You can tick all of the boxes, and then for some reason, what you're putting on press just isn't what's supposed to happen. Sometimes it's just a mystery, but yeah, it's a constant learning curve.
Constant. Yeah, it's like a bit of a black art in some ways. So let's go right back then. Why screen printing? How did you get into it? What were you doing before, or was this something you did when you left school, or how did it all start for you?
Well, that's a very long story. I mean, I left a job that I wasn't happy with, and from that point I decided I'm going to work for myself. And I'd had a little bit of experience printing T-shirts with vinyl, so heat press vinyl.
Yep.
I decided to go down the route of, so I want to print T-shirts for a living. I want to build a print shop. So I basically started doing bootleg vinyl T-shirts.
Okay.
So I was selling on the likes of eBay and Amazon and Play.com, all of them. Etsy, I think Etsy just about burst onto the scene about then. And I was doing band T-shirts and motorbike T-shirts, etc., Formula One T-shirts, and I built up quite a big business. Unfortunately, bootleg is not very safe and not very moral either. So
a lot of people
that kind of came crashing
get going
down.
that way. Just to say, a lot of people do get going through bootlegging though. But yeah, so did they kind of catch up with you, or did you just decide it was unwise? Or
so at some point during this process, I built up to quite a big shop. I had a big large format printer, so I could do the print and cut vinyl. And I bought a little bit of screen printing equipment. The screen printing equipment sort of just sat there, and I would use it every now and again, kind of not knowing what we're doing. I was even flash curing shirts. I had a flash dryer, but not a tunnel dryer for a little while. And eventually, like you say, it sort of just caught up on me. Eventually, you start getting strikes when you're doing dodgy printing for stuff you're not really supposed to be doing. The likes of eBay and Amazon, eventually they start giving you strikes and say, well, you shouldn't really be selling this. Oh, wow. And it just catches up with you. And eventually you have to say, okay, I better not do this anymore. And at that point, it was taken out of my hands. So I got rid of all of my selling channels. I got rid of all of my vinyl equipment, my heat presses. The only thing I kept was my manual screen printing carousel, my flash dryer, and I think with what little bit of money I had left, I bought a tunnel dryer.
Okay.
And I decided to rebuild, start from scratch, and become an actual screen printer.
Yeah.
And and luckily, when the decision was taken out of my hands, it was the best thing that could have happened. Because if I'd have carried on down that path, I would have got to this point eventually. So the sooner it happened, the better.
Yeah. You don't want to be learning how to screen print in jail either. You know what I mean? Like,
no, this is it.
Kind of get out of that. So, okay, that's kind of cool, right? So you started your business, you were bootlegging, which, as I said, so many people do, and I get it entirely. It's doable. But you bought most of the screen print stuff. Then when you decided you got this kind of kick out of that, you sold that and you were ready to go. You got your tunnel dryer.
Yeah.
And you just started a new model online. You said your sales are an online thing, so you build a website straight away. Like, how did that? You get traction for sales?
Yeah, so we had a little bit of an Instagram following from the bootleg days. I had a website from the bootleg days, and I basically just converted it. I converted the website rather than being a retail outlet that was selling T-shirts. I got rid of all the products, and I just put a contact us box, and I explained we can provide custom printed T-shirts.
Yeah.
I still utilized the likes of eBay and Amazon and Etsy for a little while. So I would offer packages, so 20 custom T-shirts with your artwork for a certain price. And I guess that's how I really got started in offering custom work. People would find me on eBay more than anything.
Yeah.
And they would order 20 T-shirts for a stag do, or hen do, a stag do, or quite a lot of like protesting, protest movements. We would get a lot of them in the early days, and they would order bulk load of 100 T-shirts, and they would all wear with a message on the front, and they would wear it to these rallies. And I don't get so much of that nowadays, but yeah, that's in the early days. That was one of the big things that got me screen printing, and that was easy because it was one color, and usually it was black on multiple color shirts, so that was easy. It's hard to go wrong with that. So yeah, that's kind of where I got going.
And that's
eventually.
Sorry, carry on, mate. Carry on. Yep.
No, you could. Sorry, I cut you up. You'll go for it, mate.
No. You carry on. I was going to ask you about how you learned, but keep going on about how you got going in the market. It sounds good.
Well, I guess so. I eventually the eBay and the Amazon that died down. I got rid of it, and I built up enough of a customer base that I could run solely from getting traffic through my website
Mhm.
and just Instagram and word of mouth,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm at today, pretty much.
And have you found that any of those particular markets are growing? Like, I'm interested in the effect that COVID's had. A lot of people have started their own clothing brands, but has that been your experience in the last few years as well, or has another market taken off for you?
Yeah, I would say so. The customers we had pre-COVID, quite a lot of them did disappear over the COVID years,
Mm.
but another customer took their place, and you did a lot more musicians and bands. They had no choice but to sell merchandise because they couldn't tour anymore. They couldn't,
Yeah, right.
they couldn't go play events, so they almost had to sell t-shirts, just to make a living. So
Mm.
we saw a lot more of those come by, and a lot of startups, definitely a lot of independent, guys who think, let's say, start a clothing brand for various genres.
Mm.
Quite a lot of those come and go. You see it quite often. You'll see a lot come and then,
Mm.
they have a go for a year and then it kind of doesn't work out.
Mm.
So you always have a trickle of startups, but every now and again, someone gets it right and they become a long-term customer, and
Yeah.
that's always nice.
I sometimes think with those kind of customers, you can almost tell, when you're perhaps chatting to them on the phone, just giving advice on how to get moving in it, that the people I think generally don't seem to get going is the ones that don't have a clear idea about their brand, what it means in that
Yeah,
marketplace, because there are so many clothing brands now, but also they don't know the sales aspect to it. The people that seem to really understand Instagram and you have a kind of meaningful story behind their brand seem to get more traction and grow. All right, let's
yeah,
I was going to say, let's work out how you actually learned. So going from vinyl, which is fairly straightforward, apart from the weeding, which is totally mental, to screen.
yeah.
You've already said it's got lots of variables. So how did you learn it? What did you do? Did you get some training? Did you do YouTube? How did it happen?
To be honest, it was just a lot of mistakes. I spent a long time making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. I did refer to YouTube a lot back in the day when I first started. There was only really Catspit around, but
Okay. Yeah.
Catspit was great to learn to. Even today, I love to refer back to his videos.
Yeah.
But there was no Ryan was still doing a little bit, but apart from that, it was just nearly all Catspit. But the majority was just a case of just picking it up and having a go and just working out what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And more often than not, it didn't work, so I had to try something new. And eventually, you build up a big enough pile of discarded shirts that have all washed off and they're all or over cured and burnt, and eventually you find your way to sort of working it out, I guess.
So,
Not the most cost-effective way to learn, but that's
well,
how I did it, I guess.
it's a good way to learn in the sense that you're learning. You know what I mean? Like I found, like I've come through similar kind of learning curve to you, um, and I try to do everything by YouTube. Well, I did pretty much everything
Yeah,
by YouTube, and
yeah,
the people you mentioned, but I'm much more recent, so there are others on the list. But yeah, tried not to make any mistakes, if you know what I mean, but made hundreds. But
yeah,
perhaps
of
that's
course.
actually the only way, unless you can get some training. Is there formal training in Britain for screen printing, or you know,
Not
like
not
that?
right now. I've got a not right now. There's no formal training. I believe you can do a little bit of textile printing at university as almost like a little uh, a side note to a more creative course. But
Right.
you couldn't go to university or college and say, look, I want to be a textile screen printer. Teach me how to run a screen room, how to print on press. Teach me, there's none of that right now. I have a friend who does a podcast with me who is thinking of setting up a screen printing school, so possibly in the near future, but right now, no.
Let's give that. I listened to that podcast, so let's give it a plug. That's Chippy T, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. The Chippy podcast. It's me and my mate Tony Palmer, who was a screen print consultant. So he knows what he doesn't know about screen printing. Probably ain't worth knowing. He's been around for about 35 years in the industry. So, to be honest, I'm just piggybacking off of Tony's knowledge and picking up as much as I can.
It's
and
great. I
you know,
really
just having a
enjoy
laugh
it.
at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
It's
I
good
appreciate
banter.
that.
Yeah, it's good banter. And I think they come out weekly on YouTube. Are they on any of the other streaming services?
Yeah, right now it's just YouTube and Spotify. It's turning into a full-time job on top of a full-time job. So just keeping it as simple as possible. YouTube and Spotify for now.
Yeah, that's
Just for the
good.
time being.
Okay, so you learned that way. And let's just talk about I mean, the processes from sales through to dispatch and everything in the middle. What do you reckon was the hardest thing to kind of master from one end to the other? Was it the burning of screens, the artwork? Was it the actual print experience, working with inks? What do you reckon was the hardest?
Yeah, I mean, it's all quite a hard learning curve. I think I have a bit of a little bit of a perfectionist. So I think over the years, I've constantly tried to improve that print finish.
Mhm.
And one thing I was never really happy with was the print finish of plastisol until I spent a lot of years tweaking it until what I think is quite a good print finish now. I almost wanted to imitate the effect of water-based screen printing. So if you've ever seen a screen printed water-based shirt, the feel of it is virtually non-existent, and you know, it's really nice quality. Emulating that with plastisol, because printing on a manual, I know people who do screen print water-based on manuals, but it's bloody hard work. So I prefer to print plastisol. I actually use a combination, so I'll use a high solid acrylic water-based white,
Okay.
and then I'll print plastisol colours on top. And I guess that's what over the years I've eventually learned to put together to get the desired print effect that I wanted. So I guess to answer your question, the hard thing was just being satisfied with what I'm printing, and it's took a lot of years to get to somewhere where I think actually I'm okay with this now. I'm a little bit proud of the print quality and feel that I'm putting down, because we all start with plastic. Well, I'm sure a lot of us start with plastisol, and you get big, thick, heavy prints. It's got very grainy texture, a lot of fibrillation, and it takes a lot of years of printing shirts until you realise, you know, you can get a really good quality print surface, but you just have to put all the variables together, and you just pick that up over time, I guess, over a lot of printing.
I reckon a lot of printers don't do it. You know what I mean? They're learning stuff, but they kind of don't work out. That's the thing about doing it the hard way, in a sense, is you just keep going back and back and back until you work that out and honing in those variables. So just give me those ink brands. What, it was an acrylic. We're using it as an underbase, the white.
Yeah, so I use Magna Aquaflex for the whites.
Yep.
All my white screen prints are Magna Aquaflex. And then at the moment, I'm using International Coatings, their mixing system for the plastisol colours. I'll be honest, I'm looking at switching to Wilflex. I believe it's slightly more opaque from word of mouth, but I want to test that. I'm not 100% yet. I'm going to give that a go at some point.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah.
The Wilflex and Rutland and a couple of others have been bought out, I think, by a company called Avion or Avient.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And we've noted we use Rutland and Wilflex, and with Plastisol shop. Occasionally, we'll do discharge or standard water base, but it's a nightmare to print with. And we've now, and of course, we're in Australia, so our inks will definitely come from different places. So my understanding was, pre-Avion, the whites were manufactured in the US. Now they're manufactured in China, and just in the last 6 months, the guys are going, this white doesn't seem quite so opaque.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's a real thing or an imagined thing. I've heard other screen printers saying, yeah, that's been their experience too. But that Magna, so you're going to try Wilflex white out, Tiger white.
No, so I'm going to try the Wilflex color mixing kit.
Oh, right.
So
Just the colors, yeah.
just for colors, yeah. Anything white, I'm sticking with Magna. So the high solid acrylic, there are other high solid acrylics, but high solid acrylic for me is the best print finish for white, in my opinion. You're getting a real soft, light print, but you can get a very opaque finish. But when you put, I mean, you're not technically supposed to do this, but when you put plastisol colours on top, I think you get a very good effect. The ink companies would never say mix the two, because you really shouldn't. But just in my experience, I tried it. I thought, wow, this looked amazing. I wash tested it. My t-shirts that I've got in my wardrobe that I've printed myself, the ones that last the longest are the ones that have got a combination of water-based underbase, plastisol top colours.
Okay.
But maybe I'm just getting lucky.
Well, it's like you say, you kind of worked it out. And so it sounds like like not quite, but a little bit like a discharge and then plastisol in terms of the soft hand at the end. So like printing almost the smoothness of like a black ink on a white shirt or something, like very
exactly that.
Beautifully opaque. Wow, I'm going to have a look at that. Sounds cool. And would you reduce any of the inks at all, or what kind of meshes would you use to get that effect? What would your underbase go down on?
Well, underbases typically would be on a 40, 42, was it 43, 42? And then top colours, I would more often than not just use 90s. So I'm not putting too much ink down. I'm getting a nice sharper edge, and it's just enough to put it on top of it. As long as you've got a good opaque level underbase, those colours will sit on top really nice.
Nice. And you'd use that, sorry to keep going technical, but you'd use that ink, that Magna ink for the highlight white as well? Is that?
Yeah. So underbase, I mean, there was times I've used a plastisol as a highlight, and in all honesty, it's very difficult to see the difference. The highlight white with plastisol, when you use that water-based white as an underbase, you're almost putting down a leveler. HSA puts down a very level, it beds down all the fibers. It makes it a very nice, even, level surface. So when you put your inks on top of it, you get a real nice, you don't see so much of the texture, you don't get any fibrillation. I just find it really works well as an underbase. And then you can put plastisol whites as a highlight on top if you like. It looks really good. That looks really good as well. But I typically would plastisol colours, and then I would just use a highlight white, just use another screen for HSA, just to get that super soft feel.
Yeah, wow, okay. Manually screen printing 90 Ts is quite hard going, but you're obviously pretty buff to do that. And you spoke about getting an auto earlier, but you're obviously coping perfectly well with a manual with a 90 T.
Yeah, I mean, towards the end of the year, when the madness of Christmas comes about, and I'm stood at that press all the time. Like my shoulders could start to hurt, and my forearms are getting a bit sore.
Yeah.
So the busy time. It's not too bad when it's like right now. It's going to be quiet for a little bit. It's Christmas is over with, and it should be steady. I'll be totally fine printing on a manual. But then when the busy, when the peaks come, that's when it gets tough.
And is that your peak going to Christmas, or is it summer as well, or like how does that work through the calendar for you?
It's difficult to say, because we've just had the COVID years, if you like to call it. It's just been so unpredictable. What used to be my peaks and troughs, and what used to be a almost predictable year, has totally been wiped out. And when I expect to be busy, I've been super quiet. It's just so up and down at the moment. And I feel like we're still settling out. We're still leveling back into normality a little bit. So I've not really got a set pattern at the minute. But Christmas is always a rush just because it's a case of everybody, it's just finishing up all the orders and getting them out in time so that they all have it before Christmas and they can get, they get their orders out to their customers. It's always just adds a little level of stress, especially when the couriers are super slow, which they have been this year. So,
and then you shut down. You do a full shutdown, like for
full shutdown. Yeah. So I mean, the shop it's not so much like a forced shutdown. It's just it just goes quiet. My emails stop coming in, and so I just plod about the shop and have a tidy up and do a bit of DIY and a bit of organising and planning for the future, I suppose.
It's a good time to kind of catch up on those projects. You think, if I could have this working that way, make this a lot better, but you haven't got the time to actually do it. Okay, just to talk about COVID. How did it? Britain was shut down like neo-Nazis for a bit, wasn't it? So, the Third Reich took over.
Do you know what's really strange, though? My opinion of Australia, my sort of perception, should I say, of Australia was almost the same. I thought Australia had super strict rules.
It's very strange. I've been chatting to a few people about this. It depends where you are, right, in Australia. So, we had all the lockdowns. I never once didn't go to work. Not one day.
No, me neither.
It was just allowed to carry on. But if you wanted to travel interstate, if you wanted to go from New South Wales, let's say, to Queensland, no, that wasn't going to happen. And the biggest state, or one of the biggest states in the west of Australia is called Western Australia. Really novel naming convention. What we call it. They just locked out from Australia for almost half of the whole of the COVID time. Wouldn't let anyone in or out. If your old man was dying or whatever, no, you can't come in. And that, I think, has created a really big story internationally about Australia bootstrapping. But to be fair, Melbourne, so it's in the south in Victoria, they just bulletproofed the city and locked it down. And then it would be open for like a week, and then they'd lock it down again. And apparently, I've not researched it, but people say that Melbourne, end to end, has had the longest lockdown in the world.
Wow.
But what happened is quite a few people left the state of Victoria and migrated away to other places. But we were hit badly in terms of the revenue. Like, it dropped, I think in the first month of lockdown, it was like 96% of the revenue just vanished.
Wow.
In that first year, we came back, we were 16% down, but the next year it doubled in revenue. And then last year it doubled it didn't double, it grew by about 65-66%. So it's kind of like, wow, how did that happen? Was that your kind of experience as well? It just stopped? Or
I would say it's fairly similar. When it very first came about, it was dead. But I didn't receive a single email. Everybody was just in panic mode and wondering what the hell was going to go on. But then eventually the emails start trickling back in. And like I say, a lot of customers who stopped were replaced with people who were, trying to be a little bit savvy. Right, well, I can't go to work anymore. I can't go on tour. I better sell some T-shirts. And they started to come in. I would say that very first year was definitely down. I didn't make as much money as I normally would. The second year was almost a bounce back because restrictions were a little bit eased and things started to go ahead. More events were supposed to go ahead. Festivals were coming back. And some of them didn't make it, but people were anticipating. So we got some event shirt orders, which are, every summer you have some big size orders for events. They're always nice. And those started to come back a little bit. And then I would say, I've lost track of timing. it's kind of, we almost had a major drop, a little bit of a, oh, things are looking okay, and then it's just been up and down ever since. I can't really see a pattern right now, and
Yeah,
I think we've obviously got COVID had an impact, but then you've got all the stuff that's going on in Ukraine and the repercussions of COVID financially.
yeah.
I feel like they're almost taking the toll now. I feel like people are now suffering. Um, so what this year's going to be like, I don't know, but
It's
just keep grafting away, I guess.
yeah, and that's right. You can't predict. It's and I feel like things are very different in the market in Australia because it's just a huge continent with two men, a woman, and a dog on. Like it's a tiny population of each. So I find it very hard to understand that, but we don't have the same. Well, we have some of the same issues that you have here, but I don't know. Britain seems to be on strike. It's very confusing. Like everyone's getting
Oh,
on
it
with
is.
work, but there are no trains and no ambulances, and it's in an interesting place right now. Would you say?
I would, yeah. It's amazing how everybody's decided to strike all at the same time. That's convenient. It's yeah, it's. I tend to switch off a little bit the politics of the country, and I think when COVID hit, I became so obsessed and so involved in what's going on and having to know what's happening, and you know, being very quizzical about the whole situation, one way or another. And then it just wears you down. And I feel like at the moment we're in a bit of a situation in this country where I think people are just worn down by the politics that's going on, and the stresses involved with all the finances. And at the moment, we can't. I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but so like energy bills are going like absolutely crazy, doubling, tripling.
Wow.
So that's taken quite a toll on. I mean, I know for me, I've had to really reassess everything. My bills are so high, I was forced into reassessing my pricing and
Yeah.
cutting back on a lot of things and trying to claw some of that money back. So I think people at the moment in this country are just a little bit, just over it. You know what I mean? The attitude is just, I'm just over it. I'm not getting involved because it's just too much stress to try and keep up with. It sends you dizzy.
Yeah, and I guess everybody understands. If everyone's in the same boat, apart from the super rich, people get that prices have to go up. And everything. But I do think it's much more expensive here than Australia. Like I was looking at fuel yesterday. It's more or less double what we're paying in Australia. And
Yeah,
Australia's gone up, don't misunderstand me. Like one of the
yeah,
problems there is that things like gas, Australia exports something like 60% of everything it produces. It can't consume everything it produces, which
yeah,
is great economically. But because the
yeah,
gas is exported, they're they're trying to sell more overseas because they get better price, and then all they
yeah,
do is they just increase the local price to the international price,
yeah, yeah,
which is the government's trying to say, hey,
yeah.
that's but it's capitalism. The government can't do an awful lot to control that. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I'm from the UK, but I haven't lived here for a very long time.
Yeah.
I'm over here to see my mother. So I can't relate entirely anymore, but I come here and try and get my head around, how's this working? And just the first thing I noticed is there are no ambulances. Like that's a bit scary. Better drive more
Yeah,
carefully.
it's not ideal.
And the
Yeah, definitely. It's
protesters and Brexit and so on. But I think, there's when there's severe adversity in a protracted length of time, you'll see innovation, you'll see new industries, you know, and Britain's a real fighter, but Ukraine is complex, and the whole European
yeah,
thing
yeah,
just don't understand at all, really. Um,
yeah.
well, you're obviously growing, which is terrific in the context of that. And I spoke to, well, he wasn't a screen printer. What's he called? A T-shirt man, just a couple of weeks ago from Portsmouth.
All right.
And he's, as far as I can work out, he's a super color you know, heat presser. Yeah, so he doesn't do
Yeah.
screen printing, and he does
Yeah.
very well. But he was saying that a few print shops in his kind of neighborhood, as it were, have just gone out of business. And so
Yeah.
that's good in a way, right? It's obviously not good for them, but it means your market, it can grow. Have you noticed other
Yeah.
printers going out of business in COVID?
Yeah, one or two screen print shops that I used to talk to have gone, which is sad. I guess in one way it means there's opportunity there. I always think in times of, I mean, the best time to start a business is in a recession, right? So,
Yeah,
you've got to you've got to make the most, and you've got to find opportunity.
yeah,
I mean, in our industry, so we print T-shirts for people. It's almost a way for people to make money. So when times are hard, when money's hard, the innovative, they think outside the box. They think, well, what can I do to make some money?
yeah,
And we almost provide we are one of the options. We can provide you a product that you can make money with.
yeah,
So that almost stands us in good stead when times are hard. When recession hits,
yeah,
because it's a way for others to make money.
yeah.
So I always take a little bit of comfort in that, and then COVID was a perfect example. COVID probably couldn't have got much harder for everybody, but a lot of print shops got through it because we provided a way for people to support their families and make money for themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's good to see that level of innovation. There's been people leaving now as well, haven't there? Like teachers and like primary school ed has changed because a lot of teachers have left the country, and sometimes you see them back. That kind of happened in the 70s and 80s. I think some of those people, eventually came back when the pound got strong again. All right, let's get back to screen printing. What blanks do you use? What are you using? AS Color or Gildan, or what's your go-to?
Yeah, I mean, my go-to is definitely Ace Color. I like the Ace Color garments a lot. So 9 times out of 10, I'll push customers in that direction. And then if that's not ticking the boxes that they need, Continental Clothing, they make real nice garments for the eco-friendly side of things.
Is that a
Stanley
British
Stella.
company? Are they British? Where are they from?
I don't believe. I believe it's European. I'm not entirely sure where, but they do a lot of. So they do the Earth Positive range, which is organic cotton. A lot of it's all sort of fair wage. It goes to the manufacturers. Just very eco-friendly and ethical. Well, it ticks all those boxes. But they are real nice garments as well. They've got a real nice quality to them. Stanley Stella, I'm sure you've heard of Stanley Stella. They do nice shirts. The Gildans are almost a fail-safe for when a customer says, this is too expensive, how cheap can we go? Okay, well, we'll go for a basic Gildan. But that's always sort of my last, because the better the garment, the better the print finish. So naturally, as a printer, you always want to push the best garment because it supports your printing better.
100%.
I mean, if you put a 6-color sim process on a Stanley Stella shirt, you can put the exact same sim process on a Gildan Heavy, and the quality just doesn't look as good. It's just not the same, just because you've not got that tight knit and a smooth surface to put your shirts on.
That's right.
So yeah, I always like to go for quality.
I noticed Gildan are responding to that problem. I've not tried out all the garments, but they're producing. Well, they tell me it's to do with the enzymes, but I'm not clever enough to understand all that kind of thing. But they're trying to produce. So I'm wearing a staple 5001. We print on AS Color. Same kind of deal. We don't have Stanley Stella in Australia.
Right.
And I've not heard of the Continental company you mentioned. But so we love, AS Color. Our customers love them. But I notice Gildan are trying to replicate the staple tee in terms of the finish of the garment. It's a slightly lighter tee, I believe. And they've got so many different T-shirts coming out, think, oh, we give that a go and try them out. So they may be a bit behind the 8 ball, but I reckon have a good go at catching up. But the other thing that we find about AS Colour is people know them because they're effectively
Yeah.
a high street retail company as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Assuming they have
Yeah,
shops
yeah,
in the UK, they have shops in
yeah,
Australia,
yeah,
and so people
yeah,
on a high street level go, "Oh yeah, AS Colour, yeah, I know them. I've got an AS Colour tee, you know,
yeah,
they've had some experience of them." Whereas Gildan, for some reason in Australia, I don't know if it's the same where you are, um, people just have never heard of them, you know, or Comfort Colors or
no,
American Apparel. They just on the street, they're just like, who are they, you know? But I think a lot of bands have historically have had their t-shirts printed on Gildan. Is that the same here?
yeah, yeah. I would say so. Yeah, I think it all starts at a Gildan soft, or a Gildan premium, or a Gildan heavy. That seems to be the staple, the basic level garment. Bands in independent businesses and brands, they all start there, and then it's up to you to try and sell them something a little bit more premium. But you always seem to fall back to those three.
Mm.
I mean, if I see more Gildans in this shop than I see anything else. But that's just because some people just want to go for as cheap as they can get it, and they go for the Gildans.
Mm.
I believe Gildan are starting to discontinue some lines. I know the Gildan Premium, which I always used to like that garment. So that sort of sat between heavy and soft. It
Is
sort
that
of sat in the middle.
5,000? Is that called a 5,000?
It, I believe so. It might be. Yeah, I believe so. But I always just like that garment. But I believe that one's been discontinued. So yeah. But you mentioned comfort colours. We can't get it over here anymore.
Oh,
We used
really?
to get it a few years ago. It used to be supplied, but I think Gildan discontinued comfort colours in the UK, so there's no supplier. But I used to love those garments; they were great.
They are
I
nice.
miss them. I was trying to find them the other day, but
Some of the colors
yeah,
dye migrate very easily because of the way they're
yeah,
done. Um, but they're really nice colors and they're really good. So we have a lot of kind of surfy beach culture, obviously in Australia, and
yeah,
a lot of
perfect.
those surfing brands use something like nice washed out kind of look. So they're good for
Yeah,
those. They do dye migrate on some of the colors, which is annoying. Um, yeah, right. So maybe because there's not such a big surfy culture, I don't know. But
yeah, I guess so. Maybe. I mean, I always thought of it as like it's perfect for sort of a vintage or distressed print. Absolutely perfect. And I personally like that style. I really like the AS Colour. They do a staple wash, their washed version of the staple shirt. I love those shirts. That's my go-to when I'm looking for like a distressed finish. But that's kind of because I can't get comfort colours.
yeah,
So,
yeah, that's a shame.
but yeah.
Do you get all style as well? Like, are Gildan actually physically here, or are they just using distributors?
No, they're Europe-based, I believe. I might be wrong. But they have distributors in the UK. Pretty
Okay.
much all of the major distributors for garments will have Gildan. And then you have various distributors. Some will have some brands that you like, others will have a different brand. So
Yeah.
you tend to use all the distributors and
Yeah.
just pick and choose what you need at the time. But
Okay.
they all seem to have Gildan.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind of nice in a way because you can go to a distributor and buy any of the brands pretty much. We
Yeah, they're almost like garment houses. So you can get your Gildan, your Fruit of the
yeah.
Loom, Bella Canvas, all of them from one place pretty much. And
Wow.
then any that they haven't got, one of the other suppliers will definitely have,
Yeah.
apart from Comfort Colours.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have distributors like that. We just have to deal with the manufacturers. Um,
Directly, right?
Yeah, and that's fine, works okay. But I do sometimes wonder, you do hear about, in America, it's presumably the same in Britain, that um, they'll make up an order from lots of different distributors, whereas we just have to go to the
Yeah.
one supplier, and if they haven't,
Yeah.
it's out kind of thing. Um, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it can be an issue stock wise. But I suppose you've got a backup. So if you can't get it from one distributor, like in America, you just go to the other, and
Mm,
usually you can piece it together by getting bits and drabs from one or the other until you've got a full order. But I would say, I mean, one thing that has been a knock-on effect of COVID is it's harder to get garments. So if you get an order for 100 t-shirts, more often than not now, you're having to wait for, let's say, the triple XLs to come in stock. So they're obviously not manufacturing or restocking as often as we used to do. Because it's nine times out of 10 now, you'll get an order, you'll go to order the entirety of the stock, and there'll just be something missing. Whereas before, I think it was a little bit more, you were a little bit safer. You always knew you were going to get that stock. Now you can be waiting a little bit of time for it to come back in. So
yeah, gotcha.
That's definitely a knock-on effect.
I'm just going to put my coat on because I'm freezing. Sorry, mate. Just give me...
Welcome to UK.
Sorry about that. It's a bit pathetic, but
no, don't worry. So in Australia at Christmas time, it's the opposite of Britain, I believe. Australia's super hot, right, at Christmas?
Yeah, it's 35. I was chatting to my wife this morning, and she was saying it was a little bit too hot for her. 35. And then where one of my daughters lives, which is about an hour south, it's 42. So yeah, it's getting quite warm, but it's been very few cold years because we have a thing called El Nino, La Nina. I don't know if that's something that people know.
Right. No,
it's a weather pattern that works between the east coast of Australia and South America, and it flips.
Right.
So they'll have like a series of wet years, and we'll have like drought, and then it switches over. And so we've been flooding. So just before COVID, we had fires. They came quite close to where we are. Like when I say fires, the physical, to give you an idea of scale, the physical kind of front of the fire that's moving across the country is bigger than Britain. Right, so it's like,
wow,
we got locked into our town. There'd been a drought for 3 years, and then everything caught fire. And then when COVID actually kicked in, this El Nino thing in the Pacific switched, and it's been pouring with rain ever since. Everybody's flooding, and it's apparently about to go back the other way. So, but that's the story of Australia's dreams, right? So yeah, it's summertime there now, and it's pretty warm. So doing water-based ink for someone like us is just not feasible, really.
It's so difficult. I mean, I struggle. I attempted to be a water-based screen printer, and anything past 2 or 3 colours, I just couldn't keep up on a manual press. So on an auto, I think I could manage it, but on a manual, well, on an auto, I could definitely manage it. I think the key to an auto is that your flood bar is always moving. So whereas on a manual, you'll print your colour, and then that colour is going to be sat there whilst you print the other 5. And that's just enough time for that ink to get a little bit gummy and to start to set into edges. And as much as I love that finish, it was just almost not worth the extra stress for me personally. There are manual printers that make it work, but you just got to weigh it up, really.
Yeah, and it's like when we started, just like you, we were like, oh, we better use water-based. You know, that sounds more ecologically sound, which I'm not sure it is, by the way.
Well, it's a debate. It's definitely a debate.
We'll never get to the bottom of it because we never really know what's in any of these inks. I mean, they tell you, but you always think,
yeah. Well, the thing is, they've got to sell it, and neither side is going to tell you a bad thing. They're going to tell you either way. My mate Tony, he's convinced at some point water-based and plastisol are going to meet in the middle, and rather than having to pick from the two, we're going to have one ink that has all the eco-friendly properties, but it prints like a plastisol. You can leave it in your screen, but it also washes with water and he's convinced at some point we'll get to that point.
The Holy
So
Grail.
hopefully, so yeah, that'd be awesome.
It would be
I
nice.
think one of the biggest things is having so many different pots, and you having to pick and choose depending on what you're printing. It'd be lovely just to go to the same pot every time.
Yeah.
That'd be perfect.
I've got some friends in Perth in WA, Tony and Lazarne. They run a company called Antace, and they're actually amazing. They like me knew nothing about screen printing, but decided they just go all in, and they went to the US. I think they got a Riley Hopkins. They just got the whole works and the ink and training, and came back and set up. And they are 100% water-based house. They don't do any plastisol, and they're purists.
Wow.
I really respect. But they live in. I mean, Perth is a very, very dry city, and but they just make it work somehow. And they're working on a manual at the moment, so it's doable.
Really? Wow.
But I tried it, as I say, when we got going. After a few months, I was just like, this screen printing lark is a nightmare. And I almost gave up. I remember doing a two-color print. It was just a red white print. They weren't even touching, the inks. They were all nicely separated, and I couldn't get it registered, partly because of the crummy press I was on. But the drying out it was just mental. And I was like, I can't do this. This is just not possible. I didn't even know there was an ink called plastisol. I didn't know anything. And then I found out, and I was like,
wow.
Go for that. That sounds dodgy. And then I was like, let's give it a go. Bought a little tub of white Rutland or whatever it was, and I was like, this is just a gift. Just great. So it is hard.
Yeah. Oh, it's so much more practical to print with.
I was talking about your press. So I can see your press behind you. It looks like it's powder coated in black. But I know
that's right,
but it's meant to be red, isn't it? Am I right?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So you got an Anatole.
So when that's right. I got in touch with Anatole. Basically, I really don't like that colour, so I asked them to paint it for me, and then there was no hesitation. They just did it. Yeah, they was totally happy about painting it for me, and so it's a gunmetal grey. It's like got a slight tint of blue to it. I don't think it really shows on camera, but. Yeah, I'm glad I made that decision because it looks better. And plus, it's kind of a one of a kind now. Yeah. It's the Funder, I believe. Funder.
And it's got side
clamps. 6.6 Funder. 6.6 Funder with side clamps. The only thing I sort of regret not getting is the air clamps.
Air clamps.
I wish I'd got air clamps on it.
Yep. I didn't know they did.
Yeah, so when you you can just add it on as an optional extra. So I have to just tighten them up by hand.
Yeah.
But if I could just flick a switch and the compressors hold it tight, I think I'd have preferred that. But you live and learn. You make mistakes, don't you?
Yeah, you get that on your next one or whatever, or if you go to an auto, you different kind of clamps. Because I know that a question that has come up for you on Chippy T is this issue of registration creep when you lock down the screen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think air clamps might help that a little bit, because when you're tightening down your screens, the opposite end is going to slightly creep and move, and then you move across another. But whereas if all those 4 clamps come down at the same time, I feel like you'll be a little bit closer at least.
Yeah,
to where you want to be.
If you can hold the screen in place and those clamps come down, and they're not, like even with a manual press or where your lockdown is, where you've got 2 controllers and it's pushing a plate down, you'll always be more, one bit will go faster than the other. It's not exact. So I think, you're right on that, because registration is a nightmare if you've got it dialed in and then it moves a fraction of a mil.
It's a constant problem. I feel, I have this ambition and dream that getting an automatic will solve that problem, but maybe that's just a living in dream world.
It will and it won't.
I definitely think it'd be easier than a manual.
you can dial in. I would say with an auto, you still can often have the same kind of problem, but you can dial in the press to reduce that dramatically.
Yeah.
But they all have their quirks, you know what I mean? They're all, this one's better for that and that. We use Vastex
Yeah.
for a manual press, and we find that we had a little bit of creep when you lock in the micro edge, but
Yeah.
we were able to kind of smooth that out and remove it. And part of it was
Yeah.
technical
Yeah.
in our case. But that's a press with
Yeah.
back clamps, so not side clamps. Side clamps definitely better. There's no question of that.
Yeah, I think so. I moved from a back clamp. I had a, what did I have? I had a workhorse, quite an old workhorse press. And a lot of the threads on the bolts were threaded. You had to tap it in place with an hammer a couple of times. So it was an old press. And when I switched to the Anatol, brand new Anatol, well, it was just like a whole new. I was like, Christ, I can actually be a screen printer now.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's amazing how much it
getting
does
a
make
new.
a difference. People are always saying, the entry level is very low to screen printing, but in reality, it isn't. Like it is if you're going to vinyl or you're going to
Yeah,
supercolor, but actually getting good quality equipment makes a colossal difference in screen printing. And we were the same. We had terrible presses, and then got a Vastex. But we absolutely love our Anatol. Well, I'll maybe come on to that. But you're happy with the Anatol? What is
yeah,
the Thunder
love
again?
it. Yeah, Anatole Thunder. I honestly couldn't fault it in any way. Great, very good press. It's very solid. Post registration perfect. I couldn't be happier. I wish I'd have gone for an 8 colour. So I'm finding now a lot of the jobs that are coming through the door, and it's only very recently this year. I'm just wishing I had that extra couple of screens for a highlight white. So it might be a 6 colour print, but really I could have done with a highlight white at the end. So I needed that 7 screen. Other occasions where I think I wish I had a smooth down screen. So I've used all 6 colours, and it'd be nice to just have a screen to smooth down the underbase.
Yeah,
But I haven't got that option now. So
yeah.
I wish I'd have gone for 8 colour, but
I
my
think
next step will be an auto, so it's kind of
Yeah, and I think
put up
that's a
with it.
really critical point, right? I think that's an indicator when you're at 6 and you say we really need 8 or 9 or whatever. That's a key indicator that you're on the trajectory towards an auto. I think there are others as well, but I think that's it. We went from a 4 color one platen that lasted about 3 months before we just couldn't cope to a second hand
Yeah.
thing called an ad tech. I don't know if you've had tech here. I think it might be Australian.
It,
Um,
yeah, sounds familiar, but I don't think you get it over here very
that,
often.
that was a 4 color 3 platen, believe it or not. It was really,
Wow, free platinum.
yeah,
That's so
it was kind
bizarre.
of funky. But yeah, it was very old and got a
Yeah,
lot of reflection in the end. It had no micro, but just jumping from like a Chinese press to that was inordinately different. Then we went to a
yeah,
Vastex 4.4. And then like
yeah,
you, I said, we really need, simulated processes coming in. I'm just sort of learning back then what that was. And I was like, actually, we need more color. And I went to an
yeah,
8.8, and I actually wish I hadn't done that. It would have been fine if I'd got to a 6.6 or even 6.4.
yeah,
But
yeah,
when I got to the 8.8, the the jobs, even on a simulated process where once you've laid the underbase and flashed it, you can do wet on wet with a 90T
yeah,
screen. The jobs were so slow. And I think that's the
yeah,
point,
yeah,
So if you got an 8 color job, even if it was just,
yeah,
standard process and wet on wet, the jobs slow down so much that all your other orders just backed up. So it becomes an economic almost business
yeah,
question at that point. But it gives you like you say,
yeah, yeah.
flattening screen if you want, you put the highlight white on, because we're always tempted to hit that underbase twice, which is never good. If you
No, you want to avoid that, but there are times where there's no option. So one of the benefits I would say to printing the high solid water-based white, you can get away with it a little bit more. You can flash print your underbase. It's not advisable, it's not optimal, but you can get away with it because it's still a very thin layer of ink, so you won't run into any curing issues. Whereas if you hit plastisol, that ink's starting to build up, it's starting to get thick, and you have to be super careful that you are fully curing all the way through. And plastisol, hit flash print and then colours on top, it just looks awful. So you want to avoid that, definitely. But in water-based, you can be a little bit more forgiving.
I didn't know that. That's really good to know. I'm keen to give that Magna Aqua White. Is that what it was called?
Aquaflex. Yeah, Aquaflex. Yeah, really good. A lot of the industry are pretty much using Magna at the moment. The water-based are pretty, I would say they're pretty much the standard, the top, top of the market. Really good quality inks, just really difficult to print with on a manual.
Yeah, right.
But on an auto, no bother.
And do you reckon one of your options for an auto would be an Anatole, or are you just sort of thinking, no, we'll just see what the best of breed is?
It's just a case of it's a case of what comes on the market, really. I'll definitely be looking on the used market. My budget won't stretch to a brand new auto, so it's a case of just looking around on the used market and just finding what's available. An Anatole would be nice. An M&R or an MHM, maybe even a Rock. It's just whatever I can find, I guess, when I'm ready to buy. Yeah.
And I guess if you find other screen printers are going out of business at all, you can, kind of capitalize on that. And if you've got your ear to the ground, you can get something, that you really want. So you might have to go into the kind of compressed pneumatic presses. You might get. Would your preference be for an all electric press?
It's hard to say because I don't know. I'd have to do a little bit of research. I mean, the price of electricity at the moment is going so high. It almost makes you think: is it better to have a compressor? But I don't know. Honestly, it's just a case of I'll just see what's available at the time and sort of weigh up my options when I'm ready. But my research so far has just been more just admiring the machines and just going, wow, those are amazing, rather than digging into which is going to be best for me. I've not really got that far yet. But hopefully in the very near future.
100%.
Would be ideal.
And will you be able to cater for that in your current premises, or would you need to go for something bigger, or
that's a bit of a stumbling block. I've measured this space. There is a space downstairs, exactly the same width, so it's about 4.2 meter. So a small auto is pretty much going to fill that. So I'd have to find a bigger space, which brings another set of problems. Where I'm at now is a decent price. Where I go to fit an auto is going to at least double. So all my expenses are going to pretty much double, I would say. So taking that jump into an auto means I almost have to guarantee that I can bring in more work to pay for it, to keep it spinning. But then you're sort of living on a seesaw. So right now on a manual, there's only so much work you can physically do. And you almost need to find that balance of, okay, I'm super stressed up. I'm getting plenty of work in and I'm making money, but I'm super stressed up and I can't really cope. I could really do with an auto. But then when you start to relax a little bit, you're like, oh no, I'm not making money. And it's just finding that balance in the middle. And to be able to jump. So that's a constant struggle that I've been trying to get over for a few years, I guess. But
and
you just keep chipping away.
Yeah, and there are ways of planning for that. I think that can really help you kind of move through that. but it's a funny thing. I've been in business, different kinds of business for quite a while, and I always tell people that growth can also kill you as much as like not growing.
Yeah.
So if you don't grow at all,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sometimes you can get to a point, I think, where you can almost plateau, and then you can try and become super efficient, and then you can pull the ring
Yeah.
out that way. But um, getting good solid growth is excellent, but it's hard to manage. So
Yeah.
you have this kind of gentle linear growth, then you can kind of plan and manage. But if you suddenly do this, that's
Yeah. That's
really
right.
hard. And just, I think one of the cool things about an auto is that coping with those spikes in sales without
Yeah.
slowing down your turnaround time, it just
Yeah.
soaks them up. It works really
Yeah.
well. But then if you suddenly grow to capacity, like the team that I've worked with, I don't do the production anymore, fortunately,
Yeah.
because now I'm too old and my arms are falling off. And I came to screen printing late. That's my excuse anyway. They
Yeah.
say things like, "So is this the new normal?" It gets to another level. They go, "So is this the new normal?" I go, "Well, surely it'll quieten
Yeah.
down." And maybe it does, but it also then grows, and it's coping with that. Continuing to cope with that is a problem. And what I say to people,
Yeah.
you never get to the point where you're satisfied. So you'll hear, if you listen to other podcasts as well, you hear people saying, "How many autos is enough?" And they go, "If I can just get to
Yeah.
one, and for sure,
Yeah.
getting to
Yeah.
one makes a colossal difference." But then they go, "Oh, you know what? We probably need a second one." You know what I mean? And you think, "Oh, it's really very, very tricky
Yeah.
to get to that kind of
Yeah.
stuff."
Yeah.
But I think if you plan for it, you can work a way through that and into that. But it's about timing. That's my reckoning on it.
Yeah. I think you've got to get it right. I'm pretty close to ticking that box right now. It's yeah, when it's busy, it's so difficult to keep on top of, and the risk you take is by trying to keep on top and doing all the production yourself, you start to upset customers if they're not going out, on a reasonable time scale. If you're having to push your turnaround times anything outside of 2 or 3 weeks,
Mm,
yeah, and you start to get customers who are just not quite happy,
mm.
and that's why you're in danger of losing customers and sending yourself backwards.
Yeah,
But then there are times where, for me, where I'm super quiet and I could easily handle it on a manual. So it's that seesaw. One day I'll find a balance, but
yeah. Or
yeah,
the peaks and the troughs will be so big. So I just got to turn this off. That you'll have to go. You have to get to that next level because your arms are
yeah,
full. So you're running
yeah,
the whole business. You employ someone else, I think, as well, though, don't you?
yeah. Well, I used to have two. Well, recently I had two employees. I had my sister who comes in and she's just my right hand man. She just helps out stacking shirts, folding, polybagging, um, all the little jobs around the shop. And then I did have a lass who was basically running all my admin. Recently left. She was studying at university, so she was at university part time and here part time. Um, and it was always the plan when she found a job along the lines of the career that she was studying, she
Yeah,
would move on.
yeah.
And she just happened to find that job sort of 6 months early.
Oh,
So, sort of Christmas time, I took on that responsibility again, and all the printing, etc.
yeah.
So, whilst it's quiet right now, I'll carry that on. But then maybe towards, when things start to pick up again, April, June time, maybe I'll look at getting someone to help out with admin again.
Is
It
that
just helps to have somebody who can answer emails.
is it easy to get other people, or is that quite a hard thing?
Um, I think for the admin side of things, it's easy because you don't really need any price skills. Anybody who's got a reasonable head on the shoulders can handle it, as long as level-headed and they know how to type, we can pick it up.
Right.
It's all, I mean, and it was almost looking for character traits rather than, have you got any experience? Finding someone that fitted in to the business personality-wise and we could all get on with. That was what I sort of went for. Finding somebody who could screen print for me, which is an option that has been put forward to me a few times as an idea. I just don't think I could let anybody near me press.
Oh, really?
I just don't think I could trust them. And the amount of effort I feel like it'd take to teach someone to be able to do it, I almost don't think it'd be worth it for me, because it take so much more, so much of my time. And it take a long time. Screen printing is as we said, it's a hard learning curve. So to employ somebody to print, I struggle with that one. I think I will struggle to get someone.
And in your, I mean, part of that again might be planning. Like we went through that kind of hurdle, went over the hurdle and tripped up several times in the process, but sort of pulled it off in the end. But part of that for us was we had a clear strategy. At least we thought we had a clear strategy about where we wanted to go and where I wanted to work in the business.
Yeah,
I think with so many of these things, if you plan for it, it may not come out exactly the way you plan, but it'll move you in that direction. And so that was going to be my question for you on that is, do you see yourself more in time, not perhaps necessarily where you are now, just being the person that runs the business, or do you just want to continue in the craft really and the art of screen printing, which you've clearly nailed? I mean, and that's very attractive because screen printing is very satisfying as a job, although it's hard work. It's like, wow, that simulated process has just come out. So do you see yourself always doing that then? Is that your preference, or do you want to really kind of get into running the business only, if you see what I mean?
It's difficult. I feel like I'm quite torn between the two, because I really love the art and I'm very passionate about producing screen prints that people look at and go, wow, especially when it's other screen printers. When you get admiration from another screen printer, that's the best feeling, because all right, you must be okay at this now. You're doing okay. You're not bad.
I've never had that. I don't know what it feels
like. No, I'm still working at it. But it'd be hard to let go of that and to just sit in the wheelhouse and just tell everybody what to do. I'm also probably a little limited in my self-belief, because I almost feel like it's out of reach to be that type of business, which is probably a little bit dangerous and probably a little bit detrimental to me business. Because why not? Surely I can grow that way if I wanted to, and if I worked hard enough at it, really I should get there. But it's difficult because you kind of need to know in yourself, do I want to be that type of business? Do I just want people running around doing the production for me and I'm just in charge? Or do I just want to be almost like the craftsman, like the carpenter, the master carpenter, just being the master screen printer, if you want to call it that. I don't know. I guess you have to meet in the middle somewhere if you want to make a living out of it. Because it's all very well playing on press and, wow, these are amazing designs and playing with all the special effects inks and etc. But you've still got to sell them shirts at the end of the day.
That's right.
So you have to find that balance, I guess.
And I think it's about, like I say, planning and strategy, but it's also about making the right decision at the right point in time, which is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Are we ready for an auto? Are we ready to put someone else on press and so on? But I think, again, even if you just start thinking about that, eventually you'll work out, actually, I do want to run the business more than I want to print. Or it might be that you don't, that you want to print more for the next 10 years or whatever. And you think, actually, this is the point where I could really replace myself on the press and do more of the marketing and the sales and so on. And I think, it's a bit like, this is the first business I've owned where it's been manufacturing. It's all been kind of mined
Yeah.
in consulting and IT and things like that. And I've run all of those businesses and I've owned them all. And this is, I often say to people, man, I wish I'd started this job 30 years ago, just because it's very satisfying and it's got a lot of art in it. I really like art, I appreciate that side of it, the artisan side, the craftsman side. But I could see myself kind of liking that too much for it to become like the next level. And so there was a point when it was even before it was about a year before we had an auto, where I said, we've got to get someone else to do the printing. I actually can't keep up with the front end side of the business. We got a student rugby player in, and love him to bits. He's a great guy, and I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast, but he was just solid. He was a Trojan. Put it in front of me, I'll print it. He wasn't finessed as a printer. He didn't need to be, that wasn't his thing. Understandably, he's an educationalist. But he was just a bulwark. We put him on and we'd feed the t-shirts and bang, bang, bang. But what we did is we said, look, this is a print flash print. This is a white one. We're after a smooth result. We don't want any blushes. We want a solid print. And these things cost $6 a time, so don't ruin any of them. And we just went, okay, we better buy another 5% for each order, in case it went wrong. But he learned. And we just put him on those jobs, and then we put him on color jobs, and he kind of got there. And it was at that point I was like, okay, I can see myself being able to step away from the press. When the auto came, it changed everything around how you manage that and how you put people on that. And you can, to be honest, you not in terms of setting up the print jobs, you need, a Danny brain, you need perhaps a Sam brain that understands rego, understands chokes and the order that it needs to go in, because you've got to get that right first time on an auto. On a manual, you can just choose a different screen if
you could adjust it on the fly a little bit more.
Correct. So you need that brain, those kind of brains to set that up, but to operate the press, unless something goes wrong, you don't need that kind of level of skill, because the press is doing that work for you. So there's another question like that. But once I managed to get this lad Jason kind of going on this, I was like, I'm going to make a run for the door now, and I'm going to get the business part that I enjoy most. And I do miss it, but I also don't miss it enough to want to go back and do it. Do you know what I mean? It's definitely, for me. But it's a key business question for you.
It's something I guess I have to, like you say, maybe put a little bit of forethought into. Me and Tony talked about having a 5-year plan, because I've always sort of thought short term. You come to Christmas, New Year's Eve, you do a little bit of planning for the year ahead. But maybe now it's the time to plan 5 years ahead. Just to get you to think outside of the box a little bit. Stop, because I think very short term. I think, okay, well, I've got all these to produce. I've got, there's barely any room left to think, well, what am I going to do in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Where do I want to be? And I'm trying to switch into that mindset a little bit more now. Thinking of the bigger picture. Putting at least those bullet points, and then the details of how I get there can fill in as we go. 100%. But at least having an overall idea.
Exactly.
But I think that's something that's been on my mind, and something I'm trying to do before I get too heavily involved in production again, as the year kicks in. So hopefully,
I think
we'll work it out.
When we do a 5-year plan, the first bullet point that goes down is, when does the 5-year plan get reviewed? because
Yeah.
you know, you don't want to set everything in stone too much or give yourself too bigger aspirations, because you don't know what the journey is going to be like. So we might say, let's do a 3-year plan plus 2. And the plus 2 bit is always the dream. You know, it's always that little bit, the other auto or whatever it happens to be. Retiring, that might be a nice idea. But when you get to 2 to 3 years, you're redesigning your plan. And what happens often is at that point, people don't redesign it. They just get kind of stuck in the quagmire of where they got to. So constantly reiterating that after a while, not 2 months in or something, that wouldn't work.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's really important. But yeah, just bullet points. I mean, you know, what do I want to achieve in the next year? Well, I want to get to this level. I want to hire someone to do that. I want to be into this market over here. I want to increase the revenue to X, whatever it is. And I want to start saving for an auto. And I want to, you know, see how it's going. That's year 1. That's fine. See how that goes. What would year 2 look like? Well, if that goes according to plan, I'll buy the auto at this point, you know, let's say November. So it comes in December or January, or, you know, whenever the timing's right.
Yeah.
Maybe not December based on what you were saying. So I've got a buddy back in the Gold Coast called Mitch Rawlings, who was a bodyboarding champion. I think he might have even been at the
right.
And he had his own clothing brand.
Wow.
He's a very modest guy, but if you YouTube him, you see he's like he was sponsored by, you know, all those top brands. And he basically, after a while, was like, oh, I think I can actually screen print this stuff myself. And he hired a screen print from, who was it? One of the really top brands. Oh, forgotten who it was now. Anyway, and he's been working on Vastex manuals, and he's got this kind of idea of training, and it's pretty innovative, very innovative. He just texted me yesterday to say, my auto's here. And in my mind, I was like, this is fantastic. You've got to get the thing installed and running. But it's also a bit of a nightmare for a few months, but he'll cut through that real quick.
I bet,
But it's a thing of timing, and you know, that's part of his strategy, and he's already working on the strategy for the next bit. And I think that's the way to go with it. You know,
I'm going to say basically, I think getting the auto, you're solving a lot of problems, but then you're introducing a new set of problems. So I guess I think the when you get that auto, you're going to have, you know, that sensation of relief and excitement of what's to come.
Yeah.
But then you're going to have to start firefighting little problems.
Yeah.
Just like you do on a manual. You just swap in one set for another. But I'll still be happy to see it. If the day that comes, I think I'll probably just sit in the corner and cry and look at it for a little while.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will, you're right. You'll encounter issues that you just didn't even know existed in screen printing, because you're moving from a manual set of arms, human beings' arms, that are there's muscle memory, there's physical strength, there's the experience of, actually, I need to screen print this at a slightly different angle. Actually, that one now needs to be a push stroke because, I don't know, you've got a loose screen or something, and it's all in there, right? You've got all of that, you know exactly, you know, almost without thinking about it, you just make an adjustment and, you know, it's back on track. That all vanishes and becomes, you know, either a pneumatic or electric process that you've got no feeling of. You can't touch that. You can only see it.
Yeah.
So we found that was a big jump. And that's why I said you still need that brain to set things up. We're training someone else. So I've got one of my daughters as a co-partner in the business. She owns half the business.
Right.
And so she's 26 and she runs the whole of production, and she's bringing on one of the other team members to get him up to that level where he can register and set up. But there's some way to go on that. But the first thing we noticed was the setup time. I almost went back to a manual press. It was like, this is only we can do this. Like, it was taking hours to set up, you know, 5-7 color job or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah. That was like when we first started, it was like, but now that's piece of cake. That's as quick as it would be, probably quicker actually than on a manual press.
Yeah.
But it took us a long time to dial that in, and it was quite disheartening to begin with, because you go, oh, this thing can do
I can imagine
an hour, and suddenly, it can do 500 or 600 an hour, but it took us 2 hours to set it up.
Yeah.
4 jobs on the manual.
Yeah.
So I think there are those things, but I think it's like everything. You just learn them, you dial them in, and then it's like we're really cranking the handle now, and you're spitting them out.
Yeah.
What kind of conveyor oven do you use? Is there any particular brand or?
It's an old Panther. I don't know if you guys got Panther, but it's a Panther textile tunnel. It's very basic. It's not. When I do my Instagram pictures, I try to not put it in the shot.
Right.
I'm a little bit embarrassed by it. It's very basic, and it's just an old dryer. But the space I've got small, so it was just a case of fitting in what I could.
Yeah.
And I thought about getting a new dryer, but there's no point in me getting a dryer that's sort of a little bit bigger than what I've got now for a manual, but then a year down the line get an auto, and then I need a much bigger dryer.
Yeah.
So I'm just sort of putting up with what I've got for now. But yeah, it's just a small dryer. It's only a couple of meter. It's not a very long dryer.
Yeah.
It's not fancy. It's not got forced air or anything, but it does the job for now. Just about.
And to be honest, they are a basic thing. You know what I mean? Even like
Yeah.
the new funky this, that, and the other. They're just a glorified pizza oven, really, bigger and maybe a bit hotter.
Yeah, in a nutshell. Yeah,
that's what they are. We've just got a new one. We're really chuffed with it, but because we had an auto, but we just lumbered on with our old one, which again I was a bit embarrassed about. It's like someone said it was 30 years old. Like, I think everything's been replaced in that time. It's just an old clunky thing, and the belt slides away, and and occasionally one of the few or whatever. But it did fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tens and hundreds of thousands of garments over the years, and I think again that's a question of timing. Like I get the auto, we'll run this. Okay, the business is the turnover of garments is so big now. We need to justify getting a bigger dryer and move in and get that at that point. But yeah, I think tunnel dryers, unless like you say, you need forced air and maybe people doing DTG and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think it's such a big issue.
Yeah.
The width at some point.
Yeah, I guess it's just a case of keeping up with your printing, your output.
Yeah.
Right now, it can be a bottleneck. Sometimes I have to stand and wait for the shirts to come, to go through before I can load another shirt.
Yeah.
So I guess you just need as big a dryer that can keep up with your production rate, really.
Yeah.
Right. I guess you just need a dryer that allows you to, print at full speed and not have any hold up. And again, when that auto is within grasp, I'll upgrade to the dryer at the same time.
Yeah.
I'll have a bigger space, bigger auto, bigger dryer. Tick those 3 boxes.
Yeah.
If I can do them in the near future, I'll be pretty happy.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's a great goal. All right. So question for people that are just starting out in screen printing, so not vinyl or anything else. What would be your kind of top few bullet points of advice for people getting going in screen printing? Other than don't do it.
That would be me number one, to be fair. Do you know what? I think I would advise trying to get experience in another shop, even if you have to do it unpaid, because just from experience, learning, self-teaching, I'm a self-taught screen printer. I learned on the job. I put myself out there and tried to make money when I had no business doing that. I had no right to do that because I didn't really know what I was doing. So I was learning under such extreme pressure to deliver to paying customers and to get it right. it was almost detrimental. And I definitely feel like my progression as a screen printer was much slower than it really could have been. If I'd have just, thought, well, I like the idea of this industry. I'd love to have my own shop. Why don't I see if I can get a job somewhere doing it? And not everybody has that option. I know for me, I was probably, I mean, even now, I'm the only screen printer in quite a while. I think my nearest screen printer is in Leeds, which is a couple hours drive.
Oh wow.
Which, yeah, so I've got a reasonable catchment area. So I mean, I didn't really have that option, but I think if you've got that option, go learn on someone else's time with someone else's t-shirts and someone else's money. To be honest, because it's a very hard process to learn, and yeah, but that would probably be my number one tip. You just got to get stuck in. I guess you've just got to get experience, because you can have as much understanding the fundamentals and the basics of screen printing, understanding what blades to use, what squeegee pressure and angle, etc. You need all that, but until you pull some ink through a shirt, you don't pick the subtleties of the feel and the and you just got to do that a lot of times before it sort of clicks. So get some experience and just get stuck in is my number one tip, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Or just don't do it. Just find a better job.
I think it's a great job. I really think it's a great industry. I do.
Yeah.
The manufacturing replicable component of reprinting, like it's phenomenal. But having the art, we're not building a water pump for an Audi or whatever. We're creating art each time, and it's so also other people's art. Seeing other people get their comments and go, wow, see, we did some work for an Aboriginal artist before I came away to Britain, and he came to pick up. We don't, like you, we don't have a lot of local business. We tend to be more national, like you.
Yeah.
And we always leave the boxes open if someone's coming to collect. And this guy came out, and there's rightly a big story behind his art. And I just held up a hoodie and I went, here's a print. He was almost in tears. He was so excited.
Yeah.
His artwork on a garment. And I think that's really satisfying, as a job. I think it's
it's a nice feeling.
Do you feel like in Britain it's cutthroat, or do you feel like the printers are pretty friendly, or they're quite guarded with their secret knowledge?
I think, do you know, I'd actually think a lot of printers now, I think it's like, I almost think it's an age thing. I think a lot of the younger print shops, are quite open, and a lot of us talk to each other, and we do share a lot of things between each other. I think there are print shops, big print shops, who don't even have Instagram accounts because they don't need to. They've got no need for it. They get their business elsewhere, and I don't think they'll be sharing any secrets anytime soon. But I think the industry has almost become a lot more open, even in a short space of time. Maybe the past 5 or 6 years, seems that you can talk to each other and you can share ideas off each other, and I think that's only a good thing, because progressing the industry as a whole can only benefit all of us. The better we all get, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I feel like swapping ideas, even if, you kind of give away some of your custom or whatever, or, in the case of the town where I live, there are 2 other screen printers, and one is on contract. The other is a sort of charitable organization that's just bought the screen print business from another business in town. And they're at ground zero. They just hired a guy who's never printed in his life, didn't know anything about it, and he's getting on with it. And we're just trying to kind of interact with him and encourage him and do a bit of training and so on to help him out. And I would never have done that in any other business I've been involved in. I'd never And part of
No.
it's the enjoyment of just encouraging someone else and maybe learning from them in some cases and training them in others.
Yeah.
And I feel
Of
like
course.
it's quite a cool industry. But in Australia, I have that same dilemma in that the younger
Yeah.
folks really are quite open, it seems. So not all, I mean, and certainly not all the
Yeah.
folks aren't, but there is perhaps because of the history of the competition around that. And obviously the big print shops don't want to talk to anyone and are just working on
No.
contracts. So it's a good industry, I reckon. I really do.
Yeah, I think overall it's a very overall it's open, very friendly. I mean, I obviously on Instagram stuff, I talk to all the lots of screen printers, and we always we message each other every now and again. And I've never run into anybody who I've not got a bad word to say about anybody in the industry really. So that's
Mm,
I think that maybe that's a rarity. Other
mm.
industries are maybe not so friendly. So
You've
yeah,
also
I think
got
that's good.
suppliers here, like there's a company here called Screen Print World. I mean, that's like, wow,
Yeah,
I have that in Australia.
yeah.
That sounds fantastic. I just bought something off them. We bought a squeegee cleaner, like one of those
Oh yeah,
rotary
yeah, cool.
things with the
We
brushes in.
wind one. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I'm quite
yeah,
interested.
yeah.
I've got to buy another suitcase to get it home, but I didn't realize quite how big it was. Um, but yeah, to have suppliers like that, it's pretty cool. It's a little bit more piecemeal in Australia.
Yeah,
Mm. But yeah, I mean that's the idea behind the podcast in a way, is to try and get more kind of cross commentary and support and ideas between different screen printers and different companies. Um, so just a couple more questions. Sorry to take up all your time and for the
no,
port.
don't worry. It's cool. It's
Flipping
cool.
Sweet. Where does Sweet come from? Tell it, because it's unique, right?
uh, yeah, it's hard to forget. It's. I really wish I had a really interesting story to tell you, but
Okay.
honestly, I'm, I. It sounds so corny and a little bit cheap. I actually dreamt it. It was a dream.
Really?
So I left my job. Yeah, I left my job, and I knew I was going to do something on my own. And obviously, at that period of time, I was just constantly racking my brains, thinking, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" And then one night, I was dreaming about printing T-shirts and being a print shop, and just sort of like coming up with a business plan
Wow.
asleep. And flip it, and that's where Flippin Sweet came from. So
What? That's
I just
amazing.
I don't want to say it was like no spiritual thing. I was just obviously subconsciously
Yeah.
building a business plan, I guess,
Wow. Is there
and
in
that's where
your
it came
mind?
from.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
you
I I half regret it.
all right.
I half regret the name because quite often, so I'll be on the phone setting up I don't know, an account for a bank or a new supplier or whatever, and if they don't know what I do, they say, "Oh, that's an interesting name. Do you sell sweets?" In the
Yeah, right.
UK,
I hadn't
so
thought of that.
I
I
don't know
hadn't
if in
thought of that.
Australia it's a different word.
Lollies. Yeah.
Yeah, I think candy,
Yeah.
candy. So over here it's sweets, and I always get, "Oh, so you sell sweets?" No, I don't. I print t-shirts. So yeah, it causes some confusion,
But it's an English
but
euphemism,
generally
isn't it?
it's okay. I don't
Like
mind it.
when people say that's flipping
Yeah,
sweet.
yeah,
Yeah. So I think it works. It works really well.
yeah,
Yeah. All right.
yeah, yeah. I just thought I feel like it's a creative industry, and um, you see a lot of corporate names and a lot of corporate branding. But for our industry, it's so creative, and it should be colourful and bold, and you should have funny, weird names, etc. Just because we've got that luxury because it's creative, So I feel
Yeah.
like
I can't think of any really bad names, but there are some pretty. I wanted to call up Ink It Over, which had
oh, that's great. I like that one.
it didn't quite get approval from the other side of
Oh,
the business. Um, okay, just to kind of conclude, tips and traps for other people. You've mentioned about um, the art and the skill really of getting that smooth printing using that. Aquaflex as the underbase, and then, you know,
Yeah.
maybe using that flattening screen and so on, and reducing the fibrillation and so on. What other, so that's a major tip for people, you know, getting into it, or even people that have been into it a while and they've got that thick.
Yeah.
What other kind of tips
Yeah.
that might be helpful for people getting going in terms of the actual job of printing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would recommend. I don't think I would recommend people jump straight into printing an underbase with high solid acrylic and then using plastisol colours, because, like I say, the manufacturers will tell you not to do that. So if it all goes wrong for you, and I'm advising it, it's not my fault. But give it a go, see how it turns out for you.
Yeah.
If you're a straight plastisol printer, I think something that often gets disregarded is mixing that ink, like really stirring that ink, giving it a real good. Even if you have to get a drill, you know, you get the drills, or you can buy the mixing platforms that spin for you. Really working that ink in before you go to press for a good chunk of time makes such a big difference, I find.
Yeah.
Especially with white. White you can go from straight out of the pot, you know, just give it a quick stir, put it in your screen, or you can really thoroughly mix it and get a good consistency, and you'll just find your underbase is so much smoother and also more opaque at the same time. Yes, so don't underestimate that, I guess. Good quality screens. I guess it all starts in the screen room. I think the screen room, it isn't attractive and it isn't fun. It's cold, it's damp, it's dark. So I know when I first got going, the screen room was almost, oh God, I've got to buy a screen rack. It wasn't exciting. So it's almost got left behind a little bit. But now that I'm a little bit more clued up about these things, the screen room's everything.
Yeah.
I want my screen room to be the all singing, you know, I want it to be a Ferrari of the print shop. Really take care of the pre-press because that's where it all starts.
Yeah.
And that's the most important aspect of a good print. Good screens, high tension, clean. Yeah, so I would always, I'm very tempted to automate my screen room before I automate my print press. I'm very tempted by that. So get an auto reclaim, get an auto coater.
Yeah, autocoder. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's auto coater. That's something that could realistically happen before you even get an auto press. Yeah. So I guess take care of the pre-press, because that's where it all starts.
And just quickly, what do you do? How do you create your artwork using Illustrator, Photoshop?
Yep. So pretty much all Photoshop. Some of the separation work I outsource, just because it's actually cheaper for me to outsource than for me to physically take the time away from the press to do it myself. So if it's a multiple color job, I just outsource it. I know a guy who's like an absolute wizard in Photoshop, and he gets it spot on every single time. So it's one of those cases where you could do it all in house, but as a small business, a small print shop, time away from the press is expensive. And if I can outsource some things, it actually works out cheaper because I make that money back by, you know, getting jobs out the door. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's wisdom for sure. Okay, any questions for me before we wrap up?
Yeah, how are you finding the UK apart from really, really cold?
Extremely wet as well and dark. Yeah, Look, I'll be honest, it's good to be here. I visit rarely now. In the last 15 years, I've been here 3 times.
Wow.
This has been an extended, I've been off for 4 weeks, or I will have by the end of this week. And that's kind of nice in a sense of, you know, being a bit away from the business, although probably like you, been still doing quotes and stuff from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been good to get here. It's always good to get away from business and try and reflect and, you know, catch up with mates and stuff and do this kind of stuff. It's a real gift.
Yeah.
I do worry a little bit about Britain, but I can't honestly say I really understand the politics or anything like that anymore. I don't know if anyone does, but it's certainly
No, I don't think anybody does.
it's like three
I don't think
prime
anybody gets
ministers,
it.
3 different prime ministers in the last year or so. Yeah. But that's the same anywhere, I guess, at the moment. But yeah, I'm enjoying it here. Yeah, thanks. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
good.
listen,
Good.
Danny, before you go, flippinsweet.co.uk, is that right?
That's right. That's the one.
And the Instagram.
Flippin Sweet UK.
Okay.
Is my Instagram.
And you on Facebook as well?
Yeah, I don't really use it. To be honest, Instagram is all I use really. Instagram, Flippin Sweet UK. I've got a TikTok account, but again, I just don't use it. I just can't be bothered.
I've seen
I prefer Instagram.
I've seen some of your videos on Instagram, and they're really. I was going to be really corny and say they're flipping sweet, but that's cheesy. They're really good quality. They're good fun as well. There's a lot of humor in them. I really appreciate it. It makes it more interesting.
Yeah. I tried. I think I've worked so hard at social media in the past and tried to take it seriously and just got no results. Yeah. I got to a point where I just sort of wore down a little bit and thought, you know what, I'm just going to do what I want to do on it. And I almost use it as a bit of fun for myself. So yeah, sometimes I like to put little funny videos in, and I try to have a bit of fun with my descriptions for my images.
Yeah.
Because I've got to get something back, something back out of it.
And it
so a bit of enjoyment,
more kind of earthy and real to kind of engage and connect with that. See, I'm having fun doing it. To be honest, it's not all good stuff. So, Danny, thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. It's been really informative and super encouraging to see how you're growing and what you're doing and everything. It's tremendous. So thanks for all the tips you shared as well along the way. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me on. It's good to chat, mate. Good fun.
Yeah, and we'll catch up again. You know what I mean? Like, you can do this again in a year and see where you've got.
Absolutely.
You can see where we've got to, which maybe nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for that. I'll catch you later.